like we talk about evolve or die. If we were still a hardware store and a grocery store, we most certainly would not be here.
Alex, how are you, my man?
All good. Yeah, not too bad. Gladly, it's cooled down a little bit now. I'm hoping you can't hear the buzzing of my Dyson fan next to me. Just keep a nice cool chill in the room.
Yeah, I was like that this morning. It was relatively warm when I woke up, but the fan definitely cooled me down. Patrick, how are you, my man? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I have no such concerns about heat over in Northern Ireland here, so we always stay pretty cool. So yeah, no such concerns with fans or air conditioning here. Just the rain gets a bit warmer over here in the summer.
Just the rain gets a bit warmer.
Yeah.
No. Look, the pleasure's ours. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and have a chat with us. Look, we just want to dive into a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Linwood, a bit about about your brand story. I think you've got a great brand. I think you've got a great story as a family business for the last 50 years. So I think that the best place to start is to just kind of go into a little bit about yourself, about the family business, and just about the brand itself, and just give us the backstory.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I suppose, as you mentioned, we're a family business. My grandfather started the business as a local shop and hardware store in rural County Armagh, selling kind of groceries, hardware, and then it has been through numerous evolutions over the years. So he unfortunately died quite a young man at 42, and my dad was 10 at that stage. His eldest sister took on the business at 17, ran it until, say, Dad hit 20 or 21, and then he kind of took on the running of it, just assumed the running of the business. So he's run it for the last 60 years, which is an incredible achievement, I think, in terms of longevity. So he's done loads of things. So it hasn't always been Linwood's Health Foods. It has been, he done international transport of, say, meat from Ireland to the continent and bringing fruit back to Ireland again. He has built hay sheds, he's built mushroom houses, he grew mushrooms, he had a license to import turf from the Republic of Ireland in Northern Ireland, but all the while the grocery store was kind of the one constant and the one stable. So he's a real serial entrepreneur. And then in sort of the early 80s he started to import bread into Northern Ireland because there was no fresh bread on a Monday due to the fact that nobody worked on a Sunday here for religious reasons. But in the south they were baking bread on a Sunday, so he brought in the fresh bread on a Sunday evening, started firstly in his own shop and then started delivering it to other local shops and built up a business. He then done the same with milk, so he had milk and bread on the same vehicle, and at its peak we probably were delivering to about 1,500 stores throughout Northern Ireland and probably the top half of the Republic of Ireland. That business, we then built a bakery in 96, we built a dairy in 2004, so it hasn't always been health foods, it's very much been bread and milk. Was a business there for 40 years. But along that journey, he had a heart bypass and a health setback in 1984. So he had to start looking out for his health and looking after himself. So he then discovered the benefits of flaxseed and managing his heart and his cholesterol. And he started taking flaxseed, and then he kind of thought, here, I could sell this product. So he started pushing it out into local pharmacies to see what kind of reception he got. the interest was good, so he started pushing a bit more. And in 2005, then we rented a unit in an industrial park and started to produce and pack it ourselves. So we were bringing in the flaxseed, and then we were processing it, we were milling it, blending it with all the seeds, and then packing it. So that's kind of how it started about 2005. So that was kind of growing incrementally from a very small base. At the very start, there was me plus one other person working in that factory, so I was kind of the employee number 2 in that business. Now it has grown to essentially be Linwood's the business. So as it was growing, the bread and milk was starting to struggle, and in 2016-17 we had to make the hard call to restructure the business and divest out of bakery and dairy products, because just the margin wasn't there. We had a good health food business which was essentially subsidizing the traditional business, as we called it. So we unfortunately had to make a series of redundancies and, you know, I suppose change the whole structure of the business. But thankfully we came through that. We were able to survive that. We looked after the impacted staff as best we could, giving them, you know, 150% of the statutory redundancy. And, you know, now health foods is our business. So where it was a part of a bigger business, now we're a much leaner, smaller business, but that's our full focus going forward. So I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to take over and lead the business from May of this year. As I said, Dad turned 80 in December of 21. So it's been a gradual transition anyway, but officially it happened in May of this year. So kind of my first 3 months have been spent trying to, I suppose, refine and define our purpose and our vision, and probably try to bring a bit more structure into the business. Dad, as I say, a very entrepreneurial guy, maybe not so good on structures and systems, but we're wired a bit differently. So that's what I've been trying to bring into the business, not trying to kill that entrepreneurial spirit, but also add in structures which will help to support it and you know, frame our growth going forward. So I've done a lot of work around kind of purpose, vision, and trying to build that so that everybody within the business understands you know, what Linwood's is about, why we exist, what's our purpose, and, you know, why they get up and come to work every day is not to, you know, just put a bag of flaxseed or flaxseed in a bag. It's about helping people's health and well-being. It's about helping people feel better and improving their wellness, and even, like, we talk about lifespan and health span. You can have a lifespan of 85 years, but if you're ill for the last 10 years of that, it's a pretty miserable existence. So you want to try and improve and lengthen the health span. So
that's an awesome story, I have to say. There's not many people or not many businesses that I've spoke to that have got a backstory that is derived from just the roots of just so many things that completely, you know, it's actually such a really touching story about how the brand has come to that.
It's interesting as well, actually, if you kind of think, even if sorry, Padge, I was just going to say, if you kind of think about it, right, even though the business itself has transitioned from what was maybe like a kind of day-to-day necessity in terms of bread, milk, you talked about meat, that sort of stuff, right, and now it's moved to kind of obviously more health-focused business. Actually, the kind of like the thread in all of that has actually just been about making people's lives better, you know. And you know, in the early days, right, actually making people's lives better was giving them access to bread on a Monday, because there wasn't any on a Sunday. And actually, you know, the fact that they had good subsistence, they had good quality food, and they had access to it at that stage when, you know, life was very different compared to what it is now. That was how you made people's life better, you know, because actually there's probably more of a demand for good quality food, you know, readily available, you know, than, whereas now that sort of stuff we take for granted, right? Nobody's like, oh God, I can't get a pint of milk or a loaf of bread on a Monday. You know, we'd think the world was coming to an end if that was the case now. But for us now, actually having a good quality of life is, well, actually, what supplements, what nutrients, what lifestyle do we need to lead in order to, like you said, actually live not just a long life, but a good quality of life as well. So it's kind of like the message feels like it's always been there. It's just that maybe how you got there and how you achieved it has been in a slightly different format across the life of the business.
Yeah, like he's a very driven man and a very entrepreneurial guy. So if you tell him he can't do something, he will go and prove you wrong. That so when someone says, "Sure, how are you going to sell bread and milk against all them big established companies?" It's kind of like, "Here, hold my beer, let me show you." So and it's also, there's a bit of kind of spotting an opportunity. Oh, nobody else is selling bread on a Monday, so there's my opportunity to try and grow this business. Similarly with our seed and our health food business, there was lots of whole flaxseed out there, but when you consume whole flaxseed, it passes right through the body without really, it acts as a fibre, but you don't get any of the other benefits. So he had discovered that if you mill flaxseed, then you're able to get access to all of those nutrients, the omega-3s, and then subsequently the health benefits. So he was bringing milled flaxseed essentially to the UK. There was very little of it on shelf. So he was a real pioneer, and that's really what catches his attention, is being a pioneer. And as he talks about, cutting through the jungle with a machete, exploring and pioneering and uncharted territory. That's what really catches his attention, and that's when he comes really alive. Whenever it's that we have a problem that nobody else can solve, he'll dedicate his focus and his mind to it to try and solve it. So he's still a driving force within the business, there's no question.
I think if I'm going to put the request in now, can we have him alongside you on the next podcast, just to kind of get his view on all this? And
be honest, but
no, I think, look, it's an incredible backstory, and I think that when you took over, did you both have the same vision moving forward, and just had different ways of getting to that vision? Is that what you've now found a way to implement and are now implementing?
Yeah, I suppose there's probably two parallel things at play. Is one, I wanted to retain all of his values and all of the good stuff that he has done over the years and implemented into the business, but I also wanted to put my own slant on things, and because if I try to be him, I'm gonna fail miserably, because we're two different people. So I have to do it my way as well. So there's an element of retaining all the good stuff and then trying to make it better and improving upon it. So there probably would have been a how should I say it? Not secrecy, but we wouldn't have been probably an especially transparent business, even within the business, our staff. So decisions would have been made very much at the top end, and then the decision would have been then kind of rolled throughout the business. Whereas I would prefer to build a much more interactive and more engaged decision-making process and structure, where communication flows up and down through the business. So probably the two things that I'm trying to build on, I had a great foundation that he has built, but I'm trying to improve probably transparency and put a bit more focus on the sustainability side of the business. So those are probably the two key things, and that engaging staff and really trying to grow and develop staff and our team is key to my ambitions.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Anything to add, Alex?
Do you know what? I think, again, I love listening to kind of what you're saying. It's interesting how you kind of, again, you pick up kind of little things that, although you said, maybe like the way kind of your dad would have done certain things and structured certain parts of the business, you're now putting your own stamp on it. What's really interesting is that actually even kind of with your dad and the rest of the family over the years, actually loads of change has happened. They've even undergone probably a lot of self-change without even kind of realising it. But actually, that's just business evolution, right? You know, you talked about how there's been so many different strings and arms of the businesses over the years. And I guess it kind of goes back to one of the things you kind of touched on earlier about maybe being kind of opportunistic and actually identifying where there's a problem or a need. And actually, that's kind of the key to the business, right? Because actually, sometimes it's not about trying to be overly fancy or have a kind of best, you know, products or, you know, or marketing or processes in place. It's just finding a niche, something that's quite fundamental, that's going to make a difference to people out there. And if you can hone in on that, and if you have the ability to kind of spot that as a business and, you know, maybe kind of slightly change tack to move direction in that way, actually that's going to probably help supplement the longevity of the business, because there's never been a business in history that has ever survived constantly doing the same thing. Every business evolves by kind of moving to the markets and moving with the trends. You know, really cliche example, right? But, you know, look at Apple. Apple's just started off, you know, selling computers, right? And they're not a business that sells computers anymore, are they? You know, there's so many different products and tech and markets they're moving into. You know, if you look at, you know, some of the other people in that space that were around when Apple first came out, they're either, you know, miles behind on market share, or they're not even actually around anymore because they kind of failed to innovate and evolve and grow. And it feels like, you know, your dad and the family and yourself have done loads of that up until now, and you're now taking that to the next phase and, you know, going to the next level in a slightly different direction. But, you know, with any luck, that's going to give you another kind of 50, 60, 70 years of life in the business, right?
I hope so. Like, I suppose, like we talk about evolve or die. So if we were still a hardware store and a grocery store, we most certainly would not be here, and I wouldn't be talking to you guys. So, you know, it has always evolved and it will continue to evolve, and now it's me who's driving that evolution now, as opposed to Dad, who has drove all of the previous evolutions. I always like, you referenced Apple, I always like the story of Nokia. It started off as a sawmill in Finland, cutting down trees and making paper, and then it moved into cabling, and then it moved into phones. So, you know, who knows what, now I probably won't see the next 60 years, but who knows where Linwoods will be in 60 years time. I'm just trying to get through the first 6 months here.
You and me both. No, but it's. I think, do you know what, that line you just came out with, I think I'm going to ingrain that on my mind. But it's such a simple phrase that I think everyone needs to, from a business perspective, you know, take account of: evolve or die. Sounds pretty blunt, but it's kind of true, right? And especially now, the modern world moves at a completely different pace to, you know, as it has done in years gone by. And that, you know, maybe before, you know, certain markets, you didn't have to, you know, tweak or change too much, and you'd probably get 5, 10, 15, you know, years of life out of something. Whereas now, yeah, if you're kind of 6, 12, 18, 24 months behind on evolving your business, that could kind of kill you off altogether, because that's the pace things move at.
But we spoke in the week, Patrick, about community, and I know it's quite a hot topic for you at the moment, and how you're really driving that with internal force about how you're going to build community, and how you're going to get local to your customer. You mentioned to me on the phone about a scenario where rather than it was you as Linwoods recommending a product to a customer, it was actually a personal trainer recommending a product to their customer, and that product being yours as the flaxseed. So talk to me a little bit about community and how you actually plan to implement that and get as close to your customer as possible.
Yeah, so if I can take you back to, so part of this work around the purpose and the vision of the business. So our purpose is to enhance people's health and well-being, helping them feel great every day through, you know, plant-based nutrition. So that's why Linwoods exists. That's what we want to do. We want to make people feel good, be healthy every day. The vision then of you know, how are we going to do that, and this come out of just an antidote, as you referenced there. So we were doing our vision day and our purpose day, and one of the guys was in talking to us, and he said, look, I've seen your product on shelves. I walked past it for years until somebody told me, my personal trainer told me, you need to be consuming Linwoods products, and he's consumed them ever since. So that it resonated with me to say, well, like all our advertising, all our branding, our beautiful packs didn't catch his attention, but once somebody advocated that you need to consume Linwoods, he took that message and he bought it, and then he went and started consuming Linwoods. So that then, our vision kind of fell out of that, where we kind of realized, okay, all this top line branding and marketing, it's really, we have to get in under the bonnet and educate people about the benefits of Linwoods and about advocacy, and how are we going to do that. So the vision then that we come up with and developed was about building a Linwoods community of millions of advocates. So that's not necessarily influencers on, from Love Island or TV or whatever. This is people recommending it to their brothers, their sisters, their parents, their friends. But we need those people to be advocates, and the more advocates we can develop into a community of Linwoods fans or advocates, that's where I think we will succeed. So we've been reviewing our advertising, our marketing and our branding kind of strategies, and looking at, okay, we've like a billboard on the M25 with thousands of people flying past it every day. It's not going to educate them enough on the benefits of what Linwoods do for you. Whereas if somebody is able to sit in front of you and tell you, this can help lower your cholesterol, or your fibre will help your digestive system, or whatever B vitamins will help with your immune system, or whatever it happens to be. So, and that's the level of interaction really that we need to be having with our customer to to get that message across and to get our benefits and that education piece. So in terms of how are we going to do that, so we've previously ran like a closed Facebook group which was called the Linwoods Health Movement over the last 2 Januaries of 2020 and 2021. 21 and 22, and they were, we would have created content from nutritional content. We would have brought in kind of PTs and different fitness experts to develop workouts and run sort of live workouts. We would have had health practitioners, nutritionists in talking about mental health, and physical health and all of those things. A real a 360 degree kind of wellness program. But then we thought, well, we're doing all this content for a closed group, we should be trying to widen that out to the wider Linwoods community. So I would say that will play a big part in trying to widen that community and build that community of eventually millions of Linwoods advocates.
Yeah, no, I think that's because I suppose community for me is about getting as local to your customer as possible, and if that is through their personal trainer, then who are you to disagree with? That's what community means. And community is going to mean so many different things for so many different brands. How you want to get local is how you want to get local.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you wanted to tie that close to your B2C and your B2B. You do have quite a big wholesale angle, but equally, at the end of the day, there is a consumer buying it at the end, whether that comes from you or they go and buy it from Tesco's. So how does your B2B and your B2C marketing strategies tie close together, or equally do they? Is that something that you're working on closely at the moment?
Yeah, it's something that we're looking at. So the B2B would be the vast majority of our business. We are very fortunate to have some great listings with Sainsbury's and Tesco and Holland & Barrett and Waitrose. We're launching now with Morrison's, 3 new products in Morrison's in the next few weeks. So that's the vast majority, as well as all our health food stores. That's the vast majority of our sales. And yes, as you say, customers are buying from them, so that's great. That said, it would be great if we could have a direct relationship with a growing number of, or even bring in new customers in. So we don't want to cannibalize one to grow the other, really. We want to use the D2C angle to actually recruit new customers who maybe aren't buying Linwood's products at all currently. And the benefit of that is that you get a closer relationship, and you can then start again building that community of people that we have direct access to. We can engage with them and, you know, learn from them. And even when it comes to, you know, launching new products, you can test it, you can trial it, get people's opinions, feedbacks and so on, you know, any potential new products. So that's kind of where that, if we could build that to a scale, that's where that really comes into its own then.
The question I was going to ask, I love the point you made about how there was that particular gentleman who, you know, for his whole life had never consumed any of the products, and then as soon as he got a recommendation from his personal trainer, he'd then never stopped taking them for every single day subsequently, which is a brilliant kind of polar flip of what, you know, somebody's attraction to your product. But what was really interesting is that, I guess, when it's about, I guess, the marketing and the message, the reason that, you know, that consumer really bought into that is because it was a message from someone of, I guess, authenticity and authority in their life, you know, and that's kind of the key bit, isn't it? Because it's really difficult sometimes as a brand to get people to really kind of buy into your message, because, you know, people are going to be cynical and say, well, of course you're going to tell me the benefits of it because it's your product. You're not going to tell me your product rubbish, clearly, right? But as soon as you get somebody who's, you know, almost like I guess an independent third party, and they give you the recommendation, that's so much more powerful, isn't it? And that's where I guess that kind of community idea comes into it as well, because actually the community, I guess, initially is actually just getting a community of people who have a voice to the end consumer. You know, they can be consumers themselves, but they've actually maybe got their own community, you know. So actually it's that kind of 80-20, isn't it? You know, you'll have a wide community of consumers, but that 20, you know, that 20% that actually have a voice, that are going to continue to recommend you to other people because they have their own community. Actually, if you get them to buy in, actually that's the community done. That's kind of what you need, because subsequently they're going to get all their followers, you know, all the people that, you know, in their own community to then buy into that as well. So it's kind of picking out the kind of key audience, and once you get them, you know, they kind of do the marketing for you.
Yeah, I think there's a big element of trust, and people, you know, that guy obviously trusted his PT and trusted his recommendations, and he openly said to us, look, I'm not really 100% sure on what the benefits I'm getting from the product, but if he told me to take it, I continue to take it. So it's about getting those advocates and those recommendations from a source of authenticity, or from a source that you trust. And in a lot of cases that's family members. Is family members or friends consistently come back as the most trusted source of information in any sort of market research data that we do. So, but then you have to reach millions of those people if they want to reach, you know, if they're each telling one or two people, you have to reach a vast number of those people. So there's a scale between those kind of very micro influencers where they influence 2 or 3 people in their household, up to kind of the influencers as we know them with you know, hundreds of thousands and millions of followers. So it's trying to get the right touch points along that scale, that, you know, they're authentic. So, you know, they must be believers of the Linwood's product and their benefits, but also that, you know, their audience then is obviously fitting in with our target audience. You know, so we could spend a lot of money targeting, you know, 22-year-old males when our target audience is 40 plus female predominant. So, you know, it's about getting the right mix of people to reach that audience.
Yeah, so in order to do that, so what was the sort of content, what was the strategy that you guys employed, to I guess, to reach that audience effectively?
Yeah, well, the first thing we had to do was define our target audience. So again, that's something that we've been working to define and refine over the last probably year. Because you could spend a lot of money targeting the wrong people. So we did refine it down to, you know, a predominantly female target audience, 40 to 75. It seems to be where our core audience or core purchases through the likes of Sainsbury's and Tesco. So it's fairly reflective of the overall audience. In terms of how do we reach them, well then you're kind of looking at what media do they consume, so Instagram and well, we're not on TikTok because that audience does not have a big TikTok population, for example. So it's as much what we don't do as what we do. Facebook will be stronger than say Instagram even, because again it has a slightly older demographic, and then you're moving into what, for say TV or VOD, you're looking at what TV content they're consuming. If you're looking at shows, well, the BBC Good Food Show or Gardener's World then starts to become more appealing than say Wellfest or some of those other ones that are targeted towards maybe a younger demographic. So you just have to try and find where your target audience is and then and be there, I suppose, it would be the short answer to that question.
Great.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it. It's about, I suppose, creating content that, like you say, gets local, because it's the content that builds the community. So if you're building on the wrong platforms, you're not going to build a community. And that's why I like the education piece that we touched on before. Is most of the content now that I definitely buy into is education content. I consume a lot of golf content. A lot of it is tips, it's tricks, it's how to feel this. It's it's not tailor made as a company driving me to buy their driver. It's how can I hit a driver better. It's that kind of content over the fact of, okay, well, come and buy my driver. No, I'll tell you how to hit a driver better, and then I hopefully organically you'll come and buy ours, because we're the one that's giving you the most value on how to hit a driver best. And it's that kind of mindset that I think is so powerful when it comes to that education piece. But mindful of time, I want to quickly ask about the pandemic. I think it's quite a hot topic at the moment, clearly still. What did you see? What were the kind of impacts of the pandemic to you, and what did you learn? Were there any massive learnings from it, from a perspective of the business?
I suppose our first interaction with the pandemic was our online sales multiplied by 7 that first week in March, or the 15th of March, whatever that was, when lockdown struck. And then as things developed over the next probably year and a half, we actually seen probably a benefit from COVID in terms of people. It's hard to define what the rationale or the reason behind it was. Is it that people were more health conscious, with COVID, and there was an element of fear, so I have to start looking after my health more than maybe previously did? So I think that was probably one element of it. There was the fact that there's no restaurants, or everybody was consuming 100% of their food from supermarkets. So obviously they got a lift, so we inevitably got a lift with that as well. So there's a number of things at play there. It's hard to really refine, and for probably we had 2 really strong years where we're now probably coming back to, I would say, normal levels. So we have seen a slowdown since probably the turn of the year. So yeah, we had probably 2 really strong years during the pandemic. Look, it made trading obviously a lot more difficult, and we had people off, and production in the factory had to go on, and logistics and everything. Even things like the amount of stock holding, we carried a lot more stock in case we had an outbreak of COVID within the factory and we're knocked out for 14 days with no production. At least we would have finished stock to continue fulfilling orders. So there's those types of contingency measures that we had to put in place to manage it and to cope with it. But thankfully, I would say we come out of it pretty well as a whole. We weren't adversely affected to any great degree, and as I say, actually maybe became a beneficiary of it for a period of time. So yeah, it wasn't all bad. Of course, lockdown was tough for everyone, but as I say, we got a bit of a lift from sales wise, so that was good.
Did you see any sort of business changes? I know you literally live a walking distance away from your office, don't you? But did you see any sort of people? Did you advocate working from home now? What's the do you have a hybrid working model with the offices rather than the warehouses and stuff? What changes did you see there?
Yeah, so obviously during lockdown we worked from home, but as I say, Dad, the business, we're quite a traditional business. There's a lot of people, we're based in the countryside, so a lot of people live in the local area, 5-10 minutes away by car. Everyone travels by car, and just the physical architecture of the office, nearly everyone has their own office. So we were able to come back into the office in I would say a reasonably safe environment, probably sooner than a lot of companies. You're not commuting on the tube and you're not in open plan offices, and so we function probably better, I would say, with people in the office. Now there is a small bit of hybrid working at the minute, but predominantly it's everyone's back in the office and working away. I would say it's like Dad's 80, he doesn't do email, he's not a big fan of Zoom or Teams or those things. He likes to go to people's office to talk to them and see them. So that was probably a major driving force behind that decision. But also, I think it's hard to build. We had a couple of people started during lockdown, and it was 6 months before they actually met anyone within the business, that they just had to start work from home, and so it's really hard to build team, build a bit of culture around the business when everybody's remote, certainly 100% of the time. I think we'd probably graduate towards a more hybrid model as things progress, but at the minute we're not really set up to accommodate home working for any really long duration of time. So but yeah, that's kind of where we're
on LinkedIn. Yeah, no, I saw on LinkedIn that you've got quite a strong company culture. You had a meetup the other week where you did like a kind of a team building day, and it seems like you've got a great culture and everybody kind of enjoys coming to work.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. Of course, we all have tough days, and there's days you don't want to get out of bed, but I think that's something that I'm keen to build upon. And we've done a quick presentation of the business, of the vision for the coming year, for the marketing plan, the sales plan, talked a bit about innovation and what's coming down the pipeline, that so that everyone in the business is informed and engaged. And then we went and had a bit of crack with team building day, different activities, and it was a good laugh. But I think that's really important that we start doing these types of things to build that engagement and build that team culture, because we have two different sites. Now they're only 6 miles apart, but there's not a lot of interaction. So it was about people meeting each other maybe for the first time potentially. So, or you maybe meet them, but you don't really know the person from that other site. So it's about building that we're all part of one team. We're all have a common purpose and a common goal, which is to, we're creating health foods which help people. It's not about putting, flaxseed in a bag, or So it was good, and I think that's hopefully the first of many of those kind of events.
Yeah, good. No, I like that. Alex, did you have anything to add before we end up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, you kind of touched on something similar earlier on. I was going to circle back to it, but you've kind of done it for me. But it's about how, I guess, purpose and message and end goal works externally as well as internally. Yeah, and again, how about community is external and internal, right? So from an internal perspective, like you said, it's not just, I work for a company that, mill and pack flaxseed, but because, it's kind of like, well, what is that? There's no driving force behind why am I getting up out of bed every morning and kind of going to work if that's it. if it's about actually the end goal is, look, we're looking to improve people's lives, make their lifestyles better, give them more longevity. Byproduct of that is they can have a happier, more quality life with their family, friends, whatever it would be. Like, that's kind of something a bit more to get out of bed for in the morning, because you think, God, actually, I'm really kind of giving something, but getting something back from what I do every day, and I'm part of that mission. Same as externally, if people see that actually it's not necessarily we just sell this product, but we do this because this is the end goal behind it. That's that whole brand piece. That's what people buy into, and that's why then, if it's you versus somebody else that sells the same product, because you've got that story and that mission and culture behind you, that's kind of what people really buy into. And you look at most businesses that are really successful, and actually they probably do a better job of pushing the end goal and the mission and the culture and the drive behind what they do, as opposed to actually the product or service itself. And that gets people to buy in externally and want to consume that product or service, but also it gets the people within the business to really buy into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, to drive more collaboration, productivity, and just feel happy in what they do, right? Because look, if you feel happy in what you do, you love coming in and doing everything you can to kind of drive for a better end result.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much summed up exactly what I'm trying to do in the business. It's developing that sense of purpose within the business of what we're about. There's a great kind of analogy, I'm not sure who to reference it to, but 3 guys were building blocks, and they asked the first guy, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm building blocks here." Second guy, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm building a wall." And they asked the third guy, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a cathedral." So he could see the overall vision of he was building a cathedral versus the first guy was just putting one block on top of the other. So that's what I'm trying to tap into, that yes, you're just filling one bag of flexi, but the end goal is to create better health for people and wellness and making people feel great about themselves. And that message resonates hopefully both within the business, and then that should flow into our marketing. And our marketing is not about Linwoods, and it's not about flaxseed. It's not even about omega-3, for example. It's about the benefit of all of those, which is, say, lower cholesterol or better health. So in terms of the hierarchy of the messaging, it's about you'll feel great because your cholesterol is lower, which is a result of omega-3, which is in flaxseed. So it's about getting that hierarchy of messaging in all our marketing and our branding, which is going to be the key to trying to educate and then subsequently deliver that growth and build the brand.
That analogy is great. That's getting clipped up and that's going on social media. So be aware that one's coming out first.
Yeah. I should really Evolve or Die. Yeah, 2 key takeaways.
Evolve or Die and the 3-man analogy. That's the only thing we've all taken from this podcast. If you told me you haven't done podcasting before, I don't believe it.
Yeah, this is my first one, so hopefully it went all right.
It did. No, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. To finish up, look, where can people find you? Where can people message you, have a chat with you, and where can they find Linwoods?
Yeah, so I'm not a big social media person, so I don't really have Facebook or Instagram or any of those things. I waste enough time on my phone without them, but I'm on LinkedIn. And really in terms of Linwoods, so we have, Linwood's Health Foods, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter handles, same on LinkedIn. We have our website, linwoodshealthfoods.com, where it's both an educational site and also like an e-commerce site as well. So you can hit us up on any of those, and then obviously we're available on probably all good retailers, as people say. So
yeah, no, great. Look, again, thank you very much for taking the time for joining us. We really appreciate it. Alex, Patrick, cheers. See you next time.
Thanks very much. All the best, guys.